Hello friends, welcome to the channel. My name is Sean, and this is the Berean Way, a channel where we strive to be as the Bereans, searching the scriptures daily in pursuit of biblical truth. So if you're new around here, we're super excited that you found us and decided to join us for today's teaching here on the Berean Way. And for all of you regular folks, thanks so much for coming back. It's great to have you here again. Now, if you haven't poked around on the channel some yet, definitely go check out some of our other videos here on the channel. We've got several playlists going, and we're dropping fresh new content every week. So go check some of those out if you'd like. Now, if you'd like to help us out, it's easy. Just give the video a like, hit the subscribe button, turn on the bell icon for notifications of new uploads, and share it with your friends. That's a quick way just to show us some love, and we're always really appreciative of the support. It means a lot in keeping this channel growing and keeping this channel going. Now, welcome to the first episode of our new series here on the Berean Way titled Earning or Honoring. Now, in this series, we'll dive deep into a common misunderstanding in faith circles today, the idea that choosing to live by the Torah, the instructions and commandments given by Yahweh, means we're trying to earn our salvation or gain some special favor with Him. Now, in this series, we will challenge this head on. We'll start by exploring what the scriptures truly say about honoring Yahweh versus attempting to earn something from Him. We'll look at biblical examples of both approaches. We're going to see how they played out in the lives of key figures, and then we're going to bring it home with practical ways to apply this in our daily walk as believers in the Messiah. Now, friend, this isn't about legalism or checklists, but it's about a heart posture that aligns with Yahweh's eternal standards for holiness and for righteousness. And so I want to begin by reading a foundational text that is familiar to most and accurately sums up our assertion that we obey Him as an expression of our love and showing honor to our Father. Let's look at Deuteronomy chapter 6, beginning at verse 4, a very familiar portion of Scripture taken from the Shema, where it says, "Hear, O Israel, Yahweh our Elohim, Yahweh is one. And you shall love Yahweh your Elohim with all your heart and with all your being and with all your might." Now, this foundational verse, known as the Shema, calls believers to wholehearted love for Yahweh that naturally expresses itself in action. And so it sets the stage for understanding honor as this outflow of love, not as a means to earn anything, leading us into how Scripture defines honor versus the misguided path of earning. So today, in part one, we'll lay the foundation by defining honor and earning from a scriptural perspective, setting the stage for the rest of our series. Now, many believers today face the accusation that wanting to walk in obedience to all of Yahweh's commands, to observe Torah, means we're relying on works instead of grace. Now, I've been accused of this many times in my personal walk while discussing my understanding of the need to walk in obedience to Yahweh's Torah while discussing it with individuals as well as in groups, and especially since beginning this channel. But let's see what Scripture really teaches. Honor is a heart response of love and respect, while earning is a misguided attempt to bargain with Yahweh. So let's begin today with understanding honor in Scripture. Now, honor in the Bible, it's about giving due respect and weight to Yahweh's authority, leading to a life aligned with His instructions, not as a way to gain something, but because He deserves it. So let's look at honor as reverence and obedience here, because honor, in the biblical sense, it begins with a deep reverence for Yahweh that naturally leads one to obedience. And so what we see is it's not about what we get in return, but it's about recognizing His sovereignty and aligning our lives with His will. Look at Exodus 20 and 12 where we read, "Respect your father and your mother so that your days are prolonged upon the soil which Yahweh your Elohim is giving you. Now here, the commandment to honor parents, it uses the Hebrew word kabod, which means to give weight or importance to someone. And so this isn't earning favor from parents, but it's acknowledging their role in our lives as given by Yahweh. And so similarly, when we honor Yahweh, we give weight, if you will, to His words and His instructions, not to manipulate outcomes, but because He is worthy. And this sets the tone for observance of His Torah, His teachings, and His instructions. It's an expression of love and respect, not a transaction, friend. But let's look at honor as a response to Yahweh's grace here. Now, in exploring honor as a response to Yahweh's grace, we see that biblical honor isn't something we work up to gain favor or initiate a relationship with Him, but it's our natural, grateful outflow to the unmerited kindness He's already poured out. Grace precedes our actions. It's Yahweh's initiative in redemption, creation, and sustenance that evokes our esteem or our honor of Him. And so this builds on the foundation that honor is relational, not transactional, and it directly counters the notion of earning by emphasizing that obedience, including Torah observance, is a thankful reply to His prior gifts, not a prerequisite for them. Let's look at Malachi 1, verse 6 here, and this is a verse that we've looked at a couple different times in our previous series of abolished or abiding, and this is Malachi 1, 6. A son esteems his father, and a servant his master. And if I am a father, where is my esteem or my honor? And if I am a master, where is my fear? And this is talking about a reverential fear here. Said Yahweh of hosts, to you priests who despise my name. But you ask, in what way have we despised your name? Now, Yahweh, He challenges the priest here, not for failing to earn His favor through more sacrifices, but for lacking esteem or honor in their actions. And that word esteem here, it ties to honor, and it's showing that it's about a heartfelt respect that is truly born out of love for Yahweh. Look at 1 Corinthians 10, verse 31. Therefore, whether you eat or drink or whatever you do, do all to the esteem or the glory or the honor of Elohim. And so for us, since grace comes through Yeshua, observing the commandments, keeping Torah, it honors that gift by living in alignment with Yahweh's character, not adding to it, friend. Look at Psalms 50, verse 23. The one who offers thanksgiving as his sacrifice glorifies me. To one who orders his way rightly, I will show the salvation of Elohim. And so here, thanksgiving in the Hebrew, todah, it honors Yahweh as a response to His deliverance, not a barter for it. And so it shows honor as aligning our ways, including Torah, with His, revealing salvation already at work in our life as a believer. So let's now look at contrasting honor with self-promotion. Now, building on our understanding of honor as reverence and a response to grace, let's now contrast it with self-promotion, a danger where obedience becomes a tool for personal elevation rather than Yahweh's exaltation. Now, true honor, it demands humility. Ensuring our obedience to Yahweh's commands stems from submissive love, not prideful motives that seek status, recognition, or a boost, if you will, in our standing with Him or others. And this distinction, it protects the purity of our faith, warning against turning devotion into some type of display. Now, true honor, as we said, it involves humility, not using obedience to boost ourselves in some way in our relationship with Yahweh. So let's look at Proverbs 15:33, where we read, the fear of Yahweh is the discipline of wisdom, and before esteem or honor is humility. Now, this proverb, it connects honor or esteem with a humble fear of Yahweh, meaning we lower ourselves to lift Him up. Now, this proverb, it serves as a stark warning against prideful motives that can subtly infiltrate our lives, or our spiritual lives, we might say, reminding us that any pursuit of wisdom or esteem must be rooted in genuine humility before Yahweh. Now, at its core, It teaches that the fear of Yahweh, a reverent awe, if you will, that leads to disciplined, wisdom-filled living, it prepares the heart for true honor, but only when preceded by a lowly, humble posture. And so, in the context of honoring Yahweh through obedience to the Torah, this means approaching his instructions with submission and surrender, viewing them as a loving response to his sovereignty rather than a platform for self-elevation or self-promotion. Now, prideful motives twist this into something that is self-serving, using Torah observance to project an image of spiritual superiority over others, to boast in our own righteousness, or to, quote, earn a higher status in Yahweh's eyes as if our efforts could add to his grace. And this was the thing that Yeshua repeatedly rebuked the Pharisees and the religious elite of his day for. Instead, true honor lowers us, acknowledging our dependence upon him, so that he alone is lifted up, fostering a relationship built on trust and devotion, free from the traps of comparison and legalism or self-congratulation, something that I would argue the modern-day church is totally consumed with. Now, as seen throughout Scripture, such as in the downfall of the proud, as we see in Proverbs 16:18, where he says, pride comes before destruction, and an arrogant spirit before a fall, or such as Yeshua's rebuke of the self-righteous Pharisees we mentioned a moment ago in Matthew 23:12, whoever exalts himself will be humbled, and whoever humbles himself will be exalted. Now, this submissive approach, it ensures that our walk in Torah reflects Yahweh's glory, not our own fleeting, self-seeking, self-serving ambitions. So let's look at the danger of attempting to earn favor. Now, attempting to earn Yahweh's favor or salvation, it transforms faith into a burdensome, self-reliant system that Scripture unequivocally rejects, as it erodes the foundational truth of Yahweh's sovereign grace in our lives. Now, this mindset, it not only misrepresents the character of Yahweh, who gives freely out of love, but it also leads to spiritual exhaustion, pride, or despair when human efforts inevitably fall short, as they will. Now, in the context of commandment keeping, following Yahweh's Torah, earning, it distorts Yahweh's instructions from a pathway of joyful alignment into nothing more than just this ledger of merits, undermining the redemptive work of Yeshua, the Messiah, in our lives. And as we'll see, this danger, it manifests in human inclinations, direct warnings, and underlying roots of pride and fear, all of which contrast sharply with the liberating honor of grace received by obedience. Now, by understanding these dangers, believers, they can guard against legalism and embrace obedience to Yahweh's commands as a response to salvation, not a means to it. So let's look at earning as a human inclination. Now, the inclination to earn favor, it reflects, I believe, a deep-seated human tendency to approach Yahweh on our own terms, relying on self-determination rather than humble submission to his revealed will in our lives. Now, this stems from the fallen nature, where autonomy supplants dependence, often leading to frustration or rebellion when our efforts are unmet, as they will be. In the series framework now, this warns against viewing Torah as a self-crafted path to righteousness instead of Yahweh's gracious guide for those who are already redeemed. Look at Genesis 4:3, where it says, "And it came to be, in the course of time, that Cain brought an offering of the fruit of the ground to Yahweh. And Abel also brought of the firstborn of his flock and of their fat, and Yahweh looked to Abel and his offering, but he did not look to Cain and his offering, and Cain was very wroth, and his face fell." Now, this early account, it illustrates the first recorded offerings, the minkah in the Hebrew, denoting a gift or a tribute, not necessarily a sin offering. Now, Cain's offering, it was from the ground's produce, without mention of first fruits or quality, while Abel's included the firstborn and fat portions, symbolizing the best and life force of the sacrifice. Now, Yahweh's act of, quote, looking to Abel's offering, It suggests approval or acceptance, while Cain's offering was rejected not because it was a vegetable rather than an animal, but likely because of his attitude, possibly a lack of faith or sincerity, as seen in his reaction of anger when he was confronted. Now, the focus here, it isn't about ritual correctness alone, but motive. Cain's self-chosen approach, it exemplifies earning as presumption, contrasting Abel's faith-driven submission to Yahweh by his offering. Now look at Hebrews 11:4, where it says, by belief Abel offered to Elohim a greater slaughter offering than Cain, through which he obtained witness that he was righteous. Elohim, witnessing of his gift, and through it, having died, he still speaks. Now, this newer covenant reflection attributes Abel's acceptance to faith, not works, highlighting earning's futility without trust. Now, this foreshadows how earning breeds resentment as self-effort clashes with divine sovereignty. But let's now look at the scriptural warnings against attempting to earn salvation. Now, Scripture repeatedly warns that salvation is an unearned gift, clarifying the newer covenant's emphasis on grace to prevent the dilution of faith into performance. Now, this directly addresses misconceptions about Torah, affirming it as a post-salvation set of instructions and teachings for holiness, not a ladder to righteousness, thus freeing believers from bondage to works. Look at Ephesians 2:8, where Paul says, for by favor you have been saved through belief, and that not of yourselves, it is the gift of Elohim. It is not by works, so that no one should boast, for we are his workmanship, created in Messiah Yeshua unto good works, which Elohim prepared beforehand that we should walk in them. Now, addressed to believers in Ephesus during a time dominated by Greco-Roman merit-based religions, this passage, it highlights grace described as unearned favor as the source accessed through faith and emphasizes it as a gift to point to its divine origin. Now, in contrast, works here, ergon, in the Greek, it refers to human efforts, including legalistic Torah keeping for justification, which invites boasting. Now, when Paul says, and that not of yourselves, the word that here, it likely refers to the entire salvation process, not just faith, emphasizing totality as Yahweh's work. Now, interestingly, verse 10 follows with good works as a result, not the cause, clearly showing that works are a part of the ongoing process of sanctification and righteousness in the life of a believer. So this shows this doesn't abolish Torah, but repositions it, freeing us to follow it as a means of honor, not as a means of a salvation requirement, countering the rebuttal that Torah observance is earning. But let's look at the root of earning, which I believe to be pride and fear. Now, at its core, this earning mindset, I believe it rises and stems from pride, believing that we can contribute to or control our salvation, and fear of insufficiency, both of which distort our view of Yahweh's sufficiency. Now, this root, I believe, exposes earning as self-exalting, humbling us to rely on His righteousness alone. Look with me at Isaiah 64 and verse 6, where it says, all of us have become like something unclean, and all our righteous acts are like a polluted garment. All of us wither like a leaf, and our iniquities carry us away like the wind. Now, in Isaiah's prayer for restoration amid exile, righteous acts here, tzedakot, in the Hebrew, it refers to self-proclaimed good works deemed as filthy rags, literally menstrual garments or menstrual rags, symbolizing ritual uncleanness. Now, the context here, at a minimum, encompassing verses 5 through 7, it expresses a lament regarding Israel's compromised actions in the absence of Yahweh, employing this poetic imagery, if you will, such as fading leaves and iniquity carried by the wind to illustrate impermanence. Thus, the proper interpretation of this text isn't universal condemnation of deeds, but a prideful, independent righteousness apart from Yahweh. True righteousness, friend, comes through dependence, aligning with grace in Yahweh. And so if you'd like to dig a little bit deeper into this verse, our friends over at Path to Zion, they just started a series based on this verse asking the question, are good works really only filthy rags biblically? So go over there and check out Joel's teachings on this very verse. Give them a like and subscribe as well while you're at it. So let's now look at the contrast in faith here, because having established the definitions of honor and earning, let's now examine how these approaches, they impact our faith, revealing a stark contrast in their outcomes. So let's look at how honor builds relationships here. Now, honor strengthens our bond with Yahweh, while earning creates barriers and brings division in our walk. Now, drawing from the Shema, love-motivated honor, it invites intimacy, as seen in the call to internalize Yahweh's words, His commands, His Torah. Look at Jeremiah 31 and verse 33. And again, this is another verse we've looked at a couple of different times in our past series of asking the question, is the Torah, is the law abolished or abiding? But let's look at Jeremiah 31, verse 33, where he says, but this shall be the covenant that I make with the house of Israel after those days, declare Yahweh. I shall put my Torah in their inward parts and write it on their hearts, and I shall be their Elohim, and they shall be my people. Now, this prophecy of the newer covenant, it illustrates how honor builds relationship by allowing Yahweh to inscribe His Torah inwardly, fostering a deep personal connection rather than just mere external compliance. And so the context, it shows the shift from stone tablets to hearts and emphasizes intimacy. Honor means welcoming Yahweh's words, His teaching, His Torah, as part of our very being, leading to a familial bond where He is, quote, our Elohim, as He says in the text, and we are His people. Contrasting earnings, detached, performance-based approach. Look at John 14:23. And this is where Yeshua answered him, and He says, if anyone loves me, he shall guard my word, or most translations would say keep my word, and my Father shall love him, and we shall come to him and make our stay with him. Now, notice here, Yeshua connects love and guarding or keeping His word, aligned with Torah, to divine indwelling. Now, the proper understanding here, it reveals honor as relational. Obedience from love invites Yahweh and Yeshua's presence, building closeness, where earning builds barriers by treating faith as a checklist without any real heart involvement. So let's now see how earning, how it undermines grace. Because attempting to earn, it negates the free gift of salvation through Yeshua, turning faith into something that is performance-based. Now, this contrast, it highlights that Torah is Yahweh's guide for holy living post-salvation, not a prerequisite. Let's look at Galatians 2:21, where Paul says, for if righteousness is through Torah, then Messiah died for naught. Now, Paul warns that relying on Torah for righteousness, earning in other words, it nullifies Yeshua's sacrifice. The focus here, it underscores grace's primacy. Salvation is through Messiah's work alone, and earning undermines it by implying human efforts are sufficient, reducing faith to just self-achievement rather than grateful, loving, heartfelt response to Yahweh and to His salvation, Yeshua. Now look at Romans 11 and 6, where Paul says, if it is by favor, it is no longer of works. Otherwise, favor is no longer favor. And if it is of works, it is no longer favor. Otherwise, works is no longer work. Now, this passage, it contrasts grace and works very sharply. Now, this shows earning mixes categories, diluting grace's free nature. Instead, Torah serves as a post-grace framework for holy living where honor expresses thankfulness without claiming credit for salvation. Look at Titus 3 and verse 5. Paul says, not because of works of righteousness which we have done, but according to his compassion, he saved us through the washing of rebirth and the renewal by the set-apart Spirit. Now, salvation, it stems from Yahweh's compassion, not our deeds, and this reinforces that earning turns faith performative, ignoring renewal by the Spirit. Honor, however, it embraces Torah as a Spirit-empowered guide for transformed lives, just as we've seen that Yahweh said that's what he would do in Jeremiah 31, that he would put the Torah on our hearts, that we would be his people, and he would be our Elohim. So let's start to wrap this up by talking about choosing honor today. Now, believers are invited to shift from these earning mindsets to honoring Yahweh through joyful obedience to his teachings and his commands. Now, this foundational choice, it sets the tone for our series, emphasizing a heart posture over actions alone. Look at Joshua 24 and 15 where he says, "And if it displeases you to serve Yahweh, choose for yourselves this day whom you're going to serve, whether the mighty ones which your fathers served that are beyond the river, or the mighty ones of the Amorites in whose land you dwell, but I and my house, we serve Yahweh." Now, Joshua's challenge, it calls for a decisive choice to serve and to honor Yahweh. And this isn't about earning favor, friend, but it's about aligning loyalties joyfully. And so today, it invites believers to choose obedience and observance of Yahweh's commands as a family commitment, prioritizing heart devotion over just empty ritualistic performance. Look at Romans 6 and verse 16, where Paul says, "Do you not know that whom you present yourselves servants for obedience, you are servants of the one whom you obey, whether of sin to death or of obedience to righteousness?" Paul frames obedience here as servitude to righteousness. And so this understanding highlights choice. Honor means yielding to Yahweh's ways for life, shifting from earnings self-focused mindset to joyful submission that produces righteousness. Look what Paul says in Romans 12 and 1. "I call upon you, therefore, brothers, through the compassion of Elohim, to present your bodies a living offering, set apart, well-pleasing to Elohim, your reasonable worship." Now, this urges offering ourselves as worship in response to compassion or grace. And so it's a heart posture of honor, not earning. Practically, it means daily choosing obedience to Yahweh's commands, his Torah, as reasonable worship, emphasizing joy, whole life obedience over just mere actions. And so as we conclude this foundational teaching, let's reflect on the truth we've uncovered. True faith isn't about striving to earn Yahweh's approval through our efforts, but about humbly honoring him through loving obedience to his Torah. And we've seen how honor flows from reverence, gratitude for his grace, and a submissive heart that exalts him above self, while earning leads only to bondage, pride, and a distortion of his sovereign love in our life. And so by choosing honor today, just as Joshua challenged us and Yeshua exemplified by his life and practice, we align our lives with the Shema's call to wholehearted love, allowing his Spirit to transform us from the inside out. And this shift isn't just conceptual, friend. It's a daily invitation to walk in freedom, guarding his word, not as a burden, but as a joyful response to the salvation already secured through our Messiah. And so in this first part of earning or honoring, we've defined honor as a relational posture of reverence as seen in Exodus 20 and 12, a grateful response to grace as seen in Malachi 1:6 and 1 Corinthians 10:31, and humble submission over self-promotion as seen in Proverbs 15 and 33. And we've contrasted this with the dangers of earning rooted in human inclination, as we've seen in Genesis 4, 3 through 5, with the offerings of Cain and Abel, scriptural warnings against works-based salvation, as seen in Ephesians 2, verses 8 through 10, and underlying pride and fear, as seen in Isaiah 64 and 6. And finally, we've explored the faith contrast. Honor, it builds intimate relationship, as we have seen from Jeremiah 31, particularly verse 33, and John 14, verse 23. While earning, it undermines grace, according to Galatians 2:21 and Romans 11:6. Now, that it's urging us to choose honor daily, as seen in Joshua 24:15 and Romans 12:1. So join us in part 2, where we'll examine biblical examples of honor lived out in the lives of key figures, bringing these truths even closer to home. So as we wrap up this video, I want to thank you for joining us today, and we hope that you'll continue to join us here at the Berean Way in our pursuit for biblical truth and understanding of the Scriptures. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the videos, share the content, hit the bell icon so that you're notified of future videos, because that really is just a simple, easy way to show us some love and support. And I would also like to encourage you to connect with us on the various social media platforms that we're on, as we've shown in this video, and we're going to link in the description box as well, as we always do. And if you have any questions, or you want more information maybe on some of the material that's been presented on the channel, you can contact us at the email associated with the channel, and that is the BereanWay1711@gmail.com. And I'd like to encourage you, check back with us regularly, as our goal at the Berean Way is to release weekly content of full-length teachings and series such as this one, as well as some shorter-length videos and clips, and possibly some live videos at some point in the future. And we look forward to seeing you at our next video release. But until then, be a Berean, walk in the Berean Way, and may Yahweh's shalom find you in your pursuit of biblical truth.